Your name, which until now hovered in the universe of your own memories and everyday situations, unexpectedly emerged in a conversation you never imagined would exist. It wasn't just any conversation, it was an intimate gathering among your people. Among those you know, those with whom you share smiles and perhaps with whom you still hold a piece of your unspoken truth. They were all there, gathered together, sharing laughs and observing the details of each other's lives. But at some point, the focus of it all, without you knowing, was directed toward you. It wasn't a simple comment. It wasn't a compliment or an empty criticism. It wasn't a word of affection. It was something deeper, something with a weight that you would only recognize when reflecting on the reasons that made you the center of that conversation. A silence spread across the room, but in a way that may have been almost imperceptible. Not a silence of rest, but of restraint. Something that recedes, yet at the same time, lingers like a separate presence, as if the air carried important information, something you shouldn't hear, but inevitably would. The secret was being revealed gradually, along with answers to so many unasked questions. It was as if time folded, and you found yourself transported to that moment. Observing from the outside, as if you were someone unrelated to that family drama, yet at the same time deeply connected. Your soul felt, your mind interpreted, and without realizing it, you began to understand what you had never imagined. They were talking about you, but not in the way you thought, not as someone distant, someone who merely featured in the stories. They were revealing more, much more. They were speaking about the feelings you had never known, about the plans that were still in the works, plans that involved you in a way that, now, it was impossible to turn back. And as those words floated in the air, as if emanating from the subtext of a veiled conversation, you began to realize that your presence there, amidst those words, was not a mere coincidence. It was not just a topic tossed into the wind. There was something significant, something that didn't fit with the assumptions you had about who he really was, about what he thought of you, what you would have never imagined. Their feelings and thoughts, until then kept hidden, finally came to the surface without warning, without your control over what was happening. Like a book you never imagined you would read, but that, once opened, reveals the most secret chapters of your story. Perhaps more secret than you anticipated. They were sharing something that was, in fact, just yours. Something that, when thrown out to the public, became more than a simple comment. It was a revelation. A key to understanding what you thought you knew, but which in reality was much further away than you imagined. And you listened, absorbed, processed. The shock wasn't just because they were talking about you. It was the depth of what was being said. Something that stirred you, that made your body respond before your mind could fully grasp what was happening. Something that previously seemed to be a part of your life, completely detached from everything you knew, now revealed itself in a visceral way. You realized, perhaps for the first time, how deep the threads are that connect others' feelings and plans to your own life. A word, a phrase spoken there, seemed to carry the weight of a secret that traversed not only generations, but also the invisible lines of time. They were talking about you, but it wasn't about you, per se. It wasn't what you thought. It wasn't the image you had. It was something more complex, more intimate. The feeling that engulfed you was unique. For a moment, you found yourself in the position of a spectator who, when looking at the stage of life, begins to realize that they are, in fact, at the center of the scene. But contrary to what you might think, you weren't prepared for this. You weren't ready to be seen this way. You weren't prepared for the words that mixed with such deep emotions. You weren't ready for them to reveal everything you might have suspected for some time all at once. The point at which the conversation touched you wasn't obvious. It was subtle, but with each new comment, a new piece of the puzzle clicked into place. You, who thought you knew your own family so well, were now faced with a raw truth. They, with their intentions and feelings, were more involved in your life than you imagined. And the reason? The reason your name was thrown into the center of that conversation, well, that's going to shock you. He, that cherished relative who always seemed so distant from everything you believed to be the family dynamic, was in fact closer to you than you would like to admit. He was there talking about you, as if he were a fundamental part of a larger plan, something that had been orchestrated over the years, but which, until that moment, you had not realized. He, with his quiet presence and words disguised as kindness, was revealing himself in a way you never imagined. He had plans for you. Plans that were not simply about affection or love, but rather about a deep manipulation, a manipulation of fate. As the conversation unfolded, a weight began to take hold of your being. You realized that there was no turning back. Now you possessed the key to what had been hidden from you, and the worst part, you understood that this revelation would change everything. It would change how you viewed your relatives, how you viewed life, and especially how you viewed him. He had always been a presence, a familiar figure, but now he was something much more complex, more frightening. You found yourself lost in a sea of conflicting perceptions. How could he have a reason to talk about you in that way? How could he feel entitled to shape and control your reality without your knowledge? Every word spoken in that conversation seemed to reverberate like an echo within you, and the shock was palpable, growing stronger with each moment. But what you didn't know was that this was just the beginning. What lay hidden in the subtext of that conversation was about to reveal itself even more. And no matter how hard you tried to understand what was happening, something told you that this truth now beginning to take shape was not something you would be able to control. Something much bigger was at stake, something that transcended your understanding. You, who until now seemed like just an observer, now had the narrative in your hands. The question was, what would you do with this revelation? What would you do knowing what you know now? What will you do knowing that the key given to you could open doors you never even imagined existed? Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't the secret that was revealed, but rather how you will react to it now. And what did he, that distant relative, truly plan for you by placing your name at the center of this conversation? The weight of that discussion, now etched in your mind like an invisible scar, still reverberated within you. It was as if their words, spoken casually, had transformed into a wave that not only struck your soul, but was also beginning to alter the landscape of everything you thought was safe. You wondered, how didn't I see this before? How could I have been so blind to everything that was happening, so far removed from who they really were? This is the effect of the secret, you realized. It entangles us, distorts us, and puts us in a position where the truth becomes a nightmare. Not because the truth itself is necessarily horrible, but because it demands that we look in the mirror and recognize our own weakness. And that weakness, that feeling of powerlessness, is what strikes you now with force. What you heard, what you perceived, is not yet the whole. You know that. There's more. Something is still hidden, something you need to understand. They weren't just talking about you. They were building a story you could never have imagined. And even now, you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. No matter how the words are stamped in your mind, there's something else happening. Something still in the shadows. And deep down, you know that the only way to discover what's truly at stake is by delving even deeper into this uncomfortable revelation. But what scares you isn't just the fact that you are now part of this plot. What frightens you is how invisible this manipulation has been. You've always believed that you knew your own family members. You thought you understood how they thought, how they acted, and now you realize that your entire reality has been built on a foundation of misconceptions. They did have a plan, and you were, unknowingly, the central piece of that plan. You were always the target, but you never managed to see it until now. You remember the exact moment when that relative, so close yet so distant, opened their mouth. You recall how their voice sounded, calm, even friendly, but something in its vibration echoed within you in a strange way. The tone of the conversation shifted from an artificial lightness to something darker, something that you at that moment couldn't identify. Somehow you sensed that something much heavier was being spoken, something that required more from you than you thought you could bear. And now you were starting to understand why. Because this isn't just any secret. This is a secret about you, about who you really are, about what you represent to those around you, about what they truly expect from you. They are watching you. Every gesture, every word. And while you questioned your own actions and intentions, their world was happening there, behind the scenes. You, unknowingly, were being drawn and redrawn by others in ways you never thought possible. The conversation about you was not a casual thing. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't just a quick mention. They were evaluating you, weighing you, reconfiguring you. A relative, a seemingly ordinary person, was now revealing themselves as the architect of something much larger, something that involves you, that affects you directly, and that, until this moment, you hadn't noticed. You always thought you were in control of your own story. You always believed that fate would unfold before your choices. But what you are discovering now is that perhaps your choices were not entirely yours. Do you want to understand what's happening? Do you want to uncover what has been hidden from you for so long? The truth is right in front of you, but you need to want to see it. Because as you become aware of everything being revealed, you enter a territory where it's no longer possible to turn back. You will be changed, not just by the revelation itself, but by the fact that this revelation will shape your next action. You will never look at your family the same way again. You will never see life in the same light. The perception of who you are and what you mean to them will be destroyed and rebuilt. Those who love you, who seem to be on your side, are playing a game. Not with you, but through you. And the worst part? You weren't invited to the table. Your presence is merely a tool, a pawn in a game that was not designed for you to win. And this realization will consume you, because you will understand that, no matter how much you lived under the impression that you were controlling your own path, in reality, everything has been orchestrated. The lines tracing your story were drawn by invisible hands, but they have always been around you. And you, at some point, allowed this to happen without realizing it. Every word that was spoken in that meeting, no matter how casual it may have seemed, now carries a new weight. They are not just words, they are signs. They were communicating with you without your knowledge. And now, by connecting all these dots, you begin to perceive the truth. It wasn't hidden from you out of malice, but for a more complex reason. They didn't want you to know. Not yet. Now the big question is, what will you do with this information? Knowing that you were a key piece in something much bigger, that you've always been at the center of a plot you never even imagined, how will you react? Will you seek deeper answers? Or will you try to return to your state of ignorance, where the truth never unfolded before you? This is where the story splits. You now must decide whether to continue living with this feeling of alienation, or to embrace the truth with all that it demands from you. It will not be easy, but the only way to find your peace is to delve into the depths of this revelation. How far are you willing to go? How far are you willing to uncover everything they've hidden from you? But remember one thing, the secret that has been revealed, no matter how shocking it is still only a part of what is really happening. What you still do not know is much bigger. And what will happen after this? Well, that remains to be seen. The next step depends only on you. If you truly grasp the weight of all this, if you understand the magnitude of the situation, you now find yourself faced with a choice that will change everything. The key you received has the power to open doors, but it also has the power to trap you. What will you do now? Now you feel the weight of responsibility in the forefront of something you had no idea about until now. The truth expands before you like a vast field, and you find yourself at the center, faced with the choice of moving forward or turning back, ignoring what you've seen. But inside, something screams. Something calls you to dig deeper, to understand what lies beyond the surface of this revelation. Because it's not just about what was said. What shook you was the way you were unintentionally exposed to something you never asked to know, and yet now, you can no longer ignore it. You are caught in a power game, a game where, no matter how hard you try to escape, the pieces continue to move around you. You were indeed a piece, but you were also the board. What were they expecting from you? What role would you play? And more importantly, what will you do now that the veils have been torn, allowing you to see what was hidden? With each moment, more questions arise. The shock, once a dense weight, now transforms into a constant pressure. No matter how much you seek rest, no matter how hard you try to close your eyes to it, the feeling remains, and the truth won't go away. It will infiltrate every thought, mixing with your decisions, with the glances of those around you. You are standing on the edge of an abyss, and it's impossible not to feel the cold wind blowing from there. There's something more, something that you have yet to realize, and your reaction now will determine what comes next, because this revelation doesn't end here. What will come after? How will you be transformed by it? It's in your hands now. And as you realize all of this, you understand that the next step cannot be taken impulsively, but with a clarity that has yet to come. If this has stirred something within you, the next step will allow you to see even further. Don't stop here. Click to continue with me on this journey and discover more of what is hidden.